I Barely Got Here is a collection of stories and conversations based on 24 years in law enforcement. You have the right to be disturbed by some of the content or disagree with the viewpoints. Anything you hear can and will be dosed with sarcasm and dark humor. You have the right to know the discussions will often be graphic with language and themes that are intended for a mature audience. Do you understand your rights? Then buckle up, Buttercup. We're going 10-8. Hello and welcome back to I Barely Got Here. I'm your host, Kevin Booncher. This is episode number 6. Dude, I saw that. I was working as a patrol officer on a PM shift that ran from 1300 to 2300 or 1 p.m. to 11 p.m. It was a great shift for me. I've never been a morning person, and it usually allowed time to get to the gym before work and meet up with friends or a date after shift. During that shift, the only downside with regard to the working conditions was the summer. Lord, then it was like working in a furnace. And those hours entailed nearly all of the hottest part of the day. Our shift started hot, got hotter, and didn't really cool down much until the very end of the shift, especially working in the heat island of the city. It wasn't unheard of to start your shift at over 100 degrees and end it the same way. The heat was made more miserable because a typical patrol officer wears a ballistic vest, a gun belt, and dark blue uniforms with black boots. The dark clothes and 15 or 20 pounds of gear you had to wear was bad enough, but the ballistic vest is the worst. So a ballistic vest, commonly referred to as a bulletproof vest, is designed to stop some bullets fired from firearms. There is no such thing as a bulletproof vest. There is nothing wearable by a person that will stop all bullets. In fact, nearly all vests worn by law enforcement are only capable of stopping common handgun rounds. A round fired from nearly any rifle can and will punch right through, unfortunately. So as technology improves, the balance between wearability, flexibility, and comfort, and the ballistic capabilities that it can provide will continue to improve. But that said, a vest is still a must-have, and it has been for decades now. I'd call any law enforcement officer who doesn't wear one a fool, without hesitation, and they would have no argument. The technology has proven itself thousands of times as a way to increase your odds of survival during a gunfight. They've also proven effective at lessening injury and death during car accidents or an attack by an edged or a blunt weapon. This is especially important benefit since nearly any cop is going to have at least one nasty wreck, and he or she will be attacked a number of times during their career. So ballistic vests don't breathe like normal hot weather clothing. I'd equate it to wrapping a half-inch thick sheet of plastic wrap around your whole torso and then work in it for about 10 hours or more during your shift. I know some bigger guys that could lose 5 pounds of water weight during the course of a shift in the summertime. It's miserable, but you get used to it. A little. Because of that, anytime you had to leave the air conditioning in a building or your car or a business, it certainly wasn't pleasant. And it had a tendency to get you a little irritable, some more than others. My hand is raised. It wasn't that you wouldn't do your job. You still stopped cars and dealt with wrecks and answered radio calls for service. You did all that you needed to do. It was just always in the back of your head that the sooner you could finish the call or the stop, or you could get that person to stop arguing with you, the sooner you could get back into a cooler place. And there was nothing better than taking a long, cold shower after peeling off that soaked vest and uniform at the end of your shift. It was a bit of a tangent, but it's kind of a funny follow. I was working a wreck during the peak of a really bad hot summer day. You always had to leave your patrol car running, mainly to power all the lights and electronics, but the benefit personally was to keep that AC pumping so you had a somewhat cool office when you got back in. After working outside for about 45 minutes, I get things finished up and make that quick walk back to my car to get in and get it out of the roadway and also to get some relief from the heat. Well, I open the driver's door and I'm hit with a heat wave. Like, I can see this wave of heat escape the car and just roll over the front of my face. So I crawl inside what feels like an oven, and I'm trying to figure out why it is just literally hotter inside my car than it is outside. Well, after about 10 seconds, I figure it out. Another officer helping me with the wreck, who is a real prankster, had gotten in there when I wasn't watching and turned the heater on full blast. I still remember confronting him later and both of us having a good laugh once I recovered from my heat stroke. So anyway, back to the story. So this day was one of the worst of the summer. It was sometime in July or August. It was well over 100 degrees. The humidity was kicked up due to the monsoon season. I'd only been on for a couple hours, and I was dispatched to a call of a naked guy in someone's backyard. All right. So as I'm heading to the location, further info from dispatch says that the guy is probably a transient. And knowing that neighborhood, I know that the backyards are open with no fences, and it is an area with a number of local transients. They also tell me that the caller's not willing to aid in prosecution, meaning that they don't want him arrested for anything, they just want him gone. So my thoughts at that point took a turn from interest to crap. Well, most beat cops will deal with transients within a short time of starting their careers. It's a very common call and a common problem. It's one of those problems that everybody likes to complain about and grandstand on, and civic leaders yell at whoever the target of the day happens to be and demand that something be done, and nobody wants to make the sausage. In all honesty, there is no good solution to the problem for a number of reasons, at least not that I've seen or heard yet. The only good thing was that no aid in prosecution, so hopefully he wouldn't do anything that would cause me to have to arrest him, and I could just get him on his way and get out of there. So these folks are homeless. Many of them have mental health issues, and just as many are alcoholics or addicts. They're unpredictable, they're filthy dirty, and they often carry communicable diseases such as tuberculosis, hepatitis, and MRSA. When you're a rookie cop, this is one of the first calls where you wish you had a latex glove for your whole body. You ask your FTO or your training officer if there's anything you can do to avoid getting a disease. Touch them as little as possible, and don't touch your face until you can clean up. That's pretty much it. But they are people, and they deserve to be treated with dignity. While I didn't enjoy dealing with them, and most don't, I always tried my best to treat them decent. And transients are like any other class or group of people. Some are decent, and some are Adam Henrys, which is lingo for assholes. I remind myself to be careful and pay attention. Like I said, these folks are unpredictable, and I've seen them go from nearly catatonic to full-on assaultive in seconds. And it's shocking to see, and if you're not careful, they'll overwhelm you before you realize what's going on. The location of the call is in an older neighborhood within our city with nice homes. They're well taken care of. There's a dirt road access between the backyards of the homes where small irrigation canals run for the yards in the area. I drove down this dirt road toward the back of the house the call had originated from. I parked a short distance away as I couldn't see anything wrong yet and didn't know where he may pop out from. So I braced for the heat and crawl out of that cop car. It doesn't take long for me to see the guy. He's laying among some plants in a backyard garden of the house. He's moving a little, but at least he's moving. I walk over to him and try to talk with him, and it's now that I see his pants, a couple pairs of shorts, and underwear are all down around his ankles. From prior experience, what probably happened here is that he was trying to go to the bathroom and fell over. So transients tend to wear more clothes than they need. I think it's just their way of carrying all of it in addition to all their other stuff. So you take this guy in the dead of summer. You know, a regular person would be wearing shorts and a t-shirt, but he's wearing pants, underwear, a couple pairs of shorts, a couple shirts, and a light sweatshirt. And all of it's just filthy dirty. I tell him to get up and pull his pants up, but it's quickly obvious that he's either drunk, he's under the influence of some drug, or he's in need of medical attention, or any combo of the three. So the first thing I do is I call dispatch and ask them to send fire to my location. Early in my career, I almost let a guy that was overdosing on heroin die because I didn't want to bother the hose draggers at 3 a.m. And in my defense, I didn't know that that's what the problem was at the time, but either way, after some good advice from one of the fire guys, been a little less hesitant to make that call. So this guy's struggling and can't get off the ground, and so I reach down and grab him by the arm to help him up. And when I get closer to his body, of course the body odor's terrible. The sleeves of his shirts and sweatshirts are so old and worn thin they just slip up and expose his skin. And he's pretty slimy and slippery due to this nasty heat and the dirt that's caked on his body and his sweat. And by this time I'm sweating profusely, especially with my efforts to help him stand, which makes my grip and efforts to help him even more difficult. I'm trying to help him get up, and at the same time help bring his pants and underwear up from his ankles so that I don't expose him to anybody else. And it's not working very well. I'm a strong person, but when it comes to lifting a floppy, wet, slimy, dirty, living person, it's not so easy no matter who you are. I get to where I'm half helping him stand up with my one hand and getting his pants pulled up with the other. He's leaning and swaying back and forth between standing and leaning against my hip. I can only hope he doesn't go 918 and try to grab something from my gun belt. 918 is police code, which basically means someone who's mentally unbalanced or just plain crazy. It's right about then that I hear a vehicle slow and abruptly come to a stop in the city street that's just a few houses to the west of me. So it kind of draws my attention, and I'm thinking that, hey, maybe this is some good Samaritan that's stopping to give me a hand, or it's just more likely the usual person that's gawking at a cop that's trying to help a half-naked guy get up. And I was wrong on both. "Dude, I saw that. I saw you beating that guy up," this guy yells. I'm like, what? What the hell now? So I glance toward him as best I can while still struggling with the transient guy, and I see this college-age guy standing up in his open-top Jeep and just glaring at me. And he yells again, "I saw that. I'm going to report you." Call the cops on the cops. It wouldn't be the first time. As if I didn't have my hands full now I've got this moron who's about to really screw up my day. Citizen complaints are not taken lightly in our department, and I really wasn't in the mood to get drug into one when I was completely in the right, which I will admit was not always the case for a few of the complaints I'd been involved in. It would also leave my squad short a person for a while and have to answer calls on my beat. So here's where that heat tends to speed up the irritation of the patience factor. As much as I wanted to put the transient back down and go over and set this guy straight, I couldn't do it. I almost had his pants up, and he seemed to be at least helping me hold him up. So I ignore the guy in the Jeep for now. So the Jeep guy stays where he's at. He's watching me like I'm going to try to run away or something. He's on his cell phone, calling the cops on the cops. One of our call takers takes the 911 call from him, and they put 2 and 2 together. They tell him that they'll send out a supervisor, and my dispatcher tells me kind of what's going on over the radio with that guy. So fire shows up pretty soon after, and they park on the same street as the Jeep guy, grab a stretcher from the ambulance, and they come out to where I had managed to get this poor transient guy underneath the shade of a tree. They do a quick assessment on him, and yeah, he's dehydrated, and he definitely needs attention. It's good I called. They load him up on a gurney and throw him in the back of the ambo and take him to the hospital. Once I know the transient's taken care of, and I thank the hose draggers for coming out and helping me, I head toward the Jeep guy with a little bit of focus. I see the glimmer of a light bulb as he's kind of realizing his error at this point. I get close to him and I tell him he doesn't know what he's doing. He doesn't know what he's seeing, and I rip into him about how I'm trying to help this poor transient guy, sweating my ass off and exposing myself to God knows what disease and filth, all while his pampered college fraternity butt is jumping up and down in his daddy's Jeep screaming about police brutality. May have been a little fired up at that point, but I will say that all my assumptions were on the mark. He's staring at me and it's sinking in. He gets it. I tell him how much trouble he could have started for me and how terrible it looks to the public and a few other things. And once I'm done, I kind of wait for his response. Well, he apologizes profusely. He stammers about it looking like I was beating this guy up and he just reacted, and he hears about things like this all the time, how the cops beat people up, and made his conclusion. So as he's hearing himself explain why he did what he did, it just makes him realize even more the mistake that he'd made. He stands and waits for me to do something. I don't know, yell at him a little more, I guess, and just looks at the ground. I tell him have a nice day and count the steps back to my air-conditioned cop car. Even in my aggravated condition, the point was made, and I see there's no further lecture needed. I call dispatch and cancel that call for the supervisor that it's taken care of. Then you just mop the sweat from your face and go 10-8 and wait for your next call. I'll never profess that police brutality doesn't occur, just like I'd never deny that cops commit other crimes. I've seen both, on rare occasions, by people that I both knew and liked and thought were good cops and good people. We all know there's bad apples out there and hate it that it makes it so hard for the rest of us to do our job without the additional judgment and scrutiny. Law enforcement isn't perfect. It's made up of people, just like any other profession out there. And no matter how hard some people want to hold the profession to perfection, it's just an unreasonable standard. Physical contact and altercations are a part of police work. Unavoidable. It is simply not possible to talk our way to a resolution in every situation, and we have to react to the actions of those that we deal with and handle them accordingly. We fight against mild resistance, and we fight for our lives and everything in between. Rinse and repeat. So how aggravating is it to be judged and mocked and accused by people who have never been in that position? especially when some of those critics have never even been in a physical confrontation in their lives. As we used to say, it's all fun and games until somebody gets punched in the face. But we, and they, do it day after day, night after night, weekends and holidays. I used to tell my guys that the majority of the public appreciates the work they do and understand we're doing the best that we can, and most of the time you believe it, but sometimes not so much. Bottom line is, police have a right to go to work and return to their families as much as anybody else. It is not part of the job description to get shot or beat or risk your life in any other pointless way that some people have expectations of us doing. The people we're forced to deal with as part of our job make decisions and take actions, which in turn elicit actions to counter their actions. Simply put, don't break the law, do what the cops tell you to do, and it's almost 100% certain that you're not going to get hurt. With that bit of soapbox lecture, I close another episode of I Barely Got Here. Thank you for listening, and don't forget to subscribe on your podcast directly to always know when the next episode's available. If you have a question or comment, please shoot me an email at ibarelygodhere@gmail.com, and don't forget to follow the podcast on Instagram and Facebook for additional info. Sam42 is 10-7.